It's not something you go and headlong into without making preparations beforehand, because like any change of a system of farming that you're going with, you need to be lining things up. And kind of what I mean by lining things up, you've kind of things like, have you white clover in your grazing swards? How are you going to bridge the gap of making silage, and so Joe has put in red clover silage, which a lot of organic farmers would have done as well.
Hello, I'm Kieran Lynch and welcome to Teagasc, the Teagasc Sheep podcast. Each episode will bring less insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. Now in this episode we'll catch up with organic sheep and tillage farmer Joe Nolan and Teagasc Organic Advisor Marianne Mulhall. Joe, who farms near Fenagh in County Carlow, outlines his farming system for us, including sheep enterprise, the tillage rotation and background to the farm. We also discuss the changes that he made in the flock in recent years, the organic conversion process and how sheep and tillage are integrated in Nolan. We also discuss lamb finching, with Joe explaining the role of different grass and clover leys, forage crops and supplementation within the system. Marianne outlines us the current challenges in the sector as well as the opportunities, highlighting the importance for strengthening linkages between organic livestock and tillage farmers, both in terms of feed source but also for lamb finching. And we also discussed the upcoming series of farm walks taking place around the country, including one on Joe's farm. Joe, I suppose I'm going to maybe start the chat with yourself first. Would you tell me a little bit about where you're farming and the system you're running?
Farming in Fenagh in Carlow. So we're just over 100 hectares, just over 250 acres here. We went organic about 5 years ago. And at the moment, I suppose it's kind of a sheep and tillage system. So farm is more or less 50-50 tillage sheep. So we have about 300, we lamb down about 360 ewes this year. Probably going to drop that slightly, but it'll hover around 350 ewes hopefully. And then on the tillage side, we grow oats for flahavans, grow some seed oats for gold crop. Then we have we grow combi crops, so pea, barley and oats together. That's for our own feed for the sheep, and we also sell about 50 tonne of it to an organic dairy farmer. And then this year, for the first time ever, we've about 7 acres of heritage wheat for milling. So that's a new one on the crop into the rotation this year. And then I suppose on the grass and the sheep side, I'm trying to do a 5-year rotation. So I'm trying to bring it back in out of tillage into grass on the 5th year. It's not always like that, but I know I have one field this year that's gone over by a year, but that was just logistics to get into that field. And then I have some red clover for the sheep, and a couple of multi-species fields.
Hell of a lot going on there, Joe. So there's a lot of different moving parts in that system, especially on the tillage side of it. I suppose our sheep podcast, so I'm going to start with the ewes. Would you tell me a little bit about the ewe flock? You're running 360. When are you lambing them? What type of ewes are you running?
Yeah, so before it was organic, it was all sheep. So at the height, we had about 950 ewes here, and then ewe lambs on top of that. It's an outdoor system mainly. The ewes would have been bred up from kind of clean mule background. There is still a few mules hanging around, but it's kind of closed now. So over the years, we've used Belclare, in a couple of other hybrid maternal ewes, rams to breed their own replacements. And in the last couple of years, we've gone down the easy care route. So I decided to breed up the easy cares for my own flock because I'm happy with the ewes lambing outside. Very happy with these affairs. They kind of surprised me actually. So this is our second or third year lambing easy cares, so they're starting to come into the system now. We're actually sharing at the moment, so which I know it's late, but we always shore late. It was just a habit from when we had all the ewes. We never really shore at the end of July when the lambs were kind of either bigger or off the ewes. But so that's kind of the aim of the ewes outdoor system. I have a small Charolais pedigree flock as well. But more of a kind of, and I do grass-fed hoggets myself from the house for nearly 20 years. So they're lambed inside, but everything is end of March, beginning of April, so I'll be lamb.
And look, so the Charlies are one thing, and you'd be known for that as well. So you always had them change system with your hogget selling with them now, I'm assuming?
Yeah, hoggets, yeah. So actually all sold already this year. Return customers. I haven't done a sale, I think, since 3 or 4 years. I did a Sheep Ireland sale, and I haven't done a sale since. So it's mainly just from the yard, all hoggets grass fed. Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's good when you've that customer base and they're coming back to you. With your ewe flock, look, you had great potential there. You had a big flock of 900 ewes, not too many of that scale knocking around.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you put in a lot of effort in breeding a ewe to suit your system over the last number of years too.
Yeah, and feet as well, I suppose. But I suppose our scan has dropped the last few years. I'm kind of putting it down. We've looked at different things, but the flock is quite young. So, we've been dropping numbers so quickly that I suppose a lot of the older ewes have gone out of the system. We're bringing hoggets through. It's quite a young flock. So I'm hoping now over the next year or two that scan will come back up. But very happy with the lambs this year. They've done very well. Probably have lambs fit to go, but we had dose a few weeks ago, and I still have, I think, 12 days on withdrawal. So,
And I suppose part of that young flock is you kind of aggressively were changing that breed, so you're probably bringing in a larger number of replacements, maybe than a conventional flock might in some cases.
yeah, I suppose we probably held back more ewe lambs last year, especially with the easy cares. Look, it's definitely impacted slightly, but I suppose the farm focus has moved slightly from all sheep, so it's not as big a deal. I didn't mind the lower. I kind of expected a lower scan this year, and I got it. It didn't really bother me as much because we're not as reliant on that scan number as we used to be.
So obviously, like the breeding, it's easy cares for the maternal side of it now. Charlie still going back as a terminal.
Yeah, Charlotte's, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Look, different system challenges in spring, even into April. So was this year. You've been outdoor always, though, Joe. So I suppose it's par for the course for you. You're used to.
Yeah, and I suppose, as I always say, people have lambed here. We've had people lambing with us over the years. You'll rarely find a ewe in the middle of the field here lambing. They lamb in shelter. It's a sheltered farm, especially from the south. So, we've built it up over 20 years. As I said, that's the reason I didn't go off and buy easy care females. I wanted to breed up from the ewes. We have a system in place, for outdoor lambing, and I'm trying to simplify it even more with the easy cares. I'm finding now that I'm not really ringing the lambs. So this year I put rings on very, very few lambs. They're just so clean.
Yeah, you're cutting labour at time too where you're busy.
Yeah.
Was there any tillage on the farm previous to joining organics? Like you're in an area where it'd be synonymous with it, so.
Oh yeah, my father was a tillage farmer. I grew up with it. Like this is beef country, so we would have had a large beef contract. So like, I suppose sheep in this area were a byproduct of the beef system rather than people being sheep farmers. Yeah, so everyone had sheep because of beef tops and beef. But yeah, growing up was all tillage. Yeah, the majority of what we did was tillage. We always had a few hundred ewes, but when I came home a while ago, one system suited me better. Beef was just gone.
Yeah.
It was hard to make money conventionally out of tillage, and we had a few cattle at the time as well. I found the same, and I decided to go all sheep. I probably have the sheep bug as well, which is a bad disease to have. But I know most people thought I was mad because I worked full time and I had over 900 ewes. But the farm is all one block as well, which makes a huge advantage when you're running that number.
To set up the structure, the system you develop worked even on a part-time basis.
Absolutely, yeah. Now I did have over years. I did have people working on the farm, not all the time. When I came home, we put a good fencing system in place, and we changed the breed of ewes. We went down more a mule clean side, mules mainly at the beginning for an outdoor system for lambing. We've always had Charolais. We've had Charolais since the early 90s. Just find they work outdoors really well. And then, fencing, we always ran good dogs. Father always had good dogs. So we've always had dogs, and we have an old beach yard actually with large walls that it's used for handling the sheep and hold 300 or 400 ewes and lambs. So everything was able to go back to the yard. We could work from the yard with everything with the handling unit. So it worked well. And then I suppose we always sowed turnips. So we would traditionally we had a more uni drill here for years before we went organic, and we would have always sowed the ewes would have been ran after the beef went. The ewes would have been ran on Swedes, and we would have sown kind of red start and different fodder crops as well. Even though it was a sheep system, we always had those fodder crops for the lambs for finishing and stuff as well.
There's a lot, like we could discuss a lot of the sheep system for hours of this, but one of the big changes in the system, and Marianne, I'll bring you in a moment of this one too, was you went organic a couple of years ago. 5 years ago now, Joe, is it?
5 years ago, I think, yeah. Marianne probably correct me. But...
Yeah, you're one of the first ones. Marianne, like that was the first of that scheme coming out then where we seen a big increase in numbers at that point.
Yeah, it was nearly even before we saw the
It was
big
before
increase.
that, yeah.
Yeah, Joe went in and that April tranche before, and it was the following back end of the year that there was a really big influx went in. So Joe kind of was a little bit ahead of the posse from that point of view, in fairness. And but I think it's fair to say as well, Joe, you have been thinking about it a good while
Yeah.
before you made the leap. You've been quietly doing your homework, which is very important. Would that be
Yeah.
right, wouldn't it?
And
Yeah. I'd been thinking of it probably for longer than a few years, but I suppose I was in a position to pull the trigger probably 2 or 3 years before I did it. But the scheme hadn't opened. The
Yeah,
scheme had been closed for a long time. And I probably wasn't in a position to do it either, just work-wise and stuff, to make such a change to the farm. And then I think the scheme opened the year before, didn't it, Marianne? And
yeah, it did. Yeah,
a friend of mine went in, and I had been talking and working with him kind of the year before that. And then Mariana stepped in and helped me then towards the end. And
Mar- and I suppose, Marianne, like we have quite a few organic farmers, quite a few organic sheep farmers. Maybe just for those listeners that aren't familiar with it, like it's not just a case in the morning of deciding I'm going to be organic. And certainly look, other things to change with the scheme and that, but maybe just take me through like just the basic steps of conversion before you're
yeah. Well,
fully
like,
organic.
yeah. Well, I suppose the way Joe went about it, and like as he said, he did think about it for several years and was kind of planning towards it. And I do think it's good advice to give to anybody. It's not something you go and headlong into without making preparations beforehand, because like any change of a system of farming that you're going with, you need to be lining things up, and that's just really important. And kind of what I mean by lining things up, you've kind of things like, have you white clover in your grazing swords? How are you going to bridge the gap of making silage, and so Joe has put in red clover silage, which a lot of organic farmers would have done as well. Um, then looking at where you're going to get your feed from. I suppose the changes Joe has made here is that he has introduced tillage into the system, so that he's able to be self-sufficient with his own feed, as well as probably growing that enterprise, the tillage enterprise, because he can see that there's such a demand for feed, organic feed, and he's selling some out off his own farm as well. The housing is another one, and while that wasn't an issue here with Joe's farm because he has an outdoor lambing system, but for farms, whether it's cattle or sheep farm, you do need to have 50% of your housing has to be of a lie back area. So you can use slats, that's fine, but you just need to have a run back, accessible run back at all times of at least 50% of the area. So, these might be things that you need to do pretty much in advance. Um,
There's a bit of planning involved there, Marion. It mightn't just be for everyone, and it's a case of adapting. Like that process. So obviously there's a year of conversion there on it. Joe, you're fully organic, so you are for a while. So Marion, just the steps there
so
from start to.
Yeah, so there's 2 years conversion period,
Okay.
Kieran, and so that means then that you, within those first 2 years, you have to manage the farm and farm to farm in an organic, under the organic standards, and that means no fertilizer, no chemical fertilizer being applied, no pesticides of any sort being applied either, and anything that you sow in has to be coming from an organic seed. All the feed that you're feeding has to be organic feed in those first 2 years as well, the minute you start into the organic system. So I suppose you're making those changes in the first 2 years. Getting into it, then we have a health plan that needs to be done up. You do that up with your vet, and you take cognizance, I suppose, of everything that is health, all the health issues that are on the farm, and you put that into your health plan. So there's little or no products that are not permitted. If you're vaccinating for toxo or enzo, and if there's pneumonias, clostridial diseases, if they are part of your pharma system at the minute, they can be perfectly well fitted into an organic system as well. You just put that all in your health plan, and the vet signs off then that these things are required for your farm.
Joe, probably your farm and up in Bison's, they suited the conversion to organic better because you had the potential for growing your own feed and a lot of crops on the farm. The importance of that rotation in it, like you had tillage existing on it, obviously now it's a bigger part of it, 50% of the farm. That gives you great opportunities to rotate crops in and grow a lot of your own feed and different types of feed on it, particularly like the red clovers, but also some of them combi crops.
Yeah, and
as well.
just when I converted, I think feed was a big focus. Like when I converted, I think I had well over 800 Joes. I dropped the number slightly because I knew I was going to do some tillage, but like the first year, focus was to get that combi crop and red clover in the first year, so that over the first winter of being organic, we had our own feed. So the first year I only grew for myself. I think I grew 20 acres of crops, and the red clover, we would put in 8 acres of red clover. So like we were tightening up on silage. I think I had silage left over from the previous year as well that I could use. But my big focus in the first spring especially was to get to a point where I could convert the ewes or finished lambing, and then I could get red clover and crops in. And it was a big focus of me was feed. I didn't want to be trying to feed 700 or 800 ewes going out trying to get it, because back then especially there wasn't much supply. So it was a huge part of converting for me, was trying to grow my own feed. And then in year two, I grew a little bit extra. Um, I sold some of the second year conversion, and I held on to the rest of it pretty cheap. And then by year three, I actively chased contracts on the tillage side. So but in the first 2 years, definitely it was trying to stay self-sufficient. And I think the only feed I bought in the first 2 years was probably 4 or 5 bags of meal for pet lambs, and that was it.
And it's an interesting thing, Marianne, you touched on this point as well, like the link up there, and Joe now is in that stage where he's selling feed. In the early days, but now, and look, organic feed has become far more widely available, and it is on some co-op shelves, but even in that, in terms of what you maybe want to be feeding, Marianne, like that link up there between organic farmers and supplying organic feed, that has become a bigger part of the sector as well.
Yeah, it really has, Kieran. Look, I think for whether you're the livestock farmer or you're the tillage farmer, it really is worth making those connections. Now, the department have launched the Organic Trading Hub, and they're, I suppose, 3 years now, nearly at this stage. And it's a platform that you can go in and you can see who's selling or who's looking for, be it stock or be it feed, and everything on it is organic. So I think that's really important. But getting the contracts, and I know Joe has that done, and lots of farmers have signed up contracts at the beginning of the year, knowing that they have a sale for their tillage crops, or vice versa, that they know somebody is growing it for them and they're not, and they're going to have their feed for the winter coming. And just gives that bit of security, and they're getting better value by having that in advance as well. Probably not paying as expensively for feed in particular, because organic feed is dear. So I think that's really helpful.
And look, probably maybe an important lesson for conventional farmers too, showing what you can do in terms of link up between the different sectors. There could be lessons learned there too. Joe, I suppose part of that, look, at winter feed is obviously a big part of it, providing the extra supplement that might be needed at key stages. That's where the combi crop and your own feed comes in. Also, though, in terms of the grassland management, like you're managing still a large number of stock without chemical nitrogen going in. Marianne touched there on white clover, you've red clover in, you've had multi-species in there before. Talk to me a little bit about the changes you've made there.
Yeah, so I suppose in the reseed side, as I said, we're trying to do it 5 years. So we're actually this was our first proper year in rotation. So 24 acres have gone back into actually we split the field in half. One lower half of the field has a tendency to flood. So we went in with kind of a wetter, high clover mix for that. Got a little bit more timothy and a few other things in it just to try and manage it. This year now it was underwater for about 6 weeks. And then the higher end of the field is very good. So that's gone in with a kind of high clover, more to do a sheep specific mix. The multi-species side, we have a few different fields of multi-species. I'm not overly convinced it suits the farm. I will go again probably. I've spoken to Marianne about it before. I am tempted to put in a specific field of red clover to finish lambs. I find red clover is fantastic for finishing lambs. Um, I have a multi-species field at the moment that I do use, but this wouldn't be a dry farm. There may be one field, but that's actually in acres, a riparian zone at the moment that would be quite sandy, but the rest of this farm wouldn't. So we've been hit and miss with the multi-species a little bit. But the red clover side has worked very well. So I am tempted next year maybe to we have a couple of fields have earmarked to come out of tillage that we might put one of them into a red clover lay, not just pure red clover, but grass lay red clover just for finishing lambs.
And I suppose it's important maybe to consider that, like, you are still able to supplement those lambs, but to have a kind of a dedicated finishing block or finishing area is an important part of your system.
Yeah, absolutely. And as well as that, all the combi crops here are undersold with a clover grass mix, manage weeds. So once, hopefully next week, that's harvested, that grows on, and we use that as well for finishing lambs. So that's another advantage. And then obviously we put cover crops in on the other tillage ground, and that I'm trying to keep that for the ewes in the new year. But like we do have other options. It's not just, and it's going to be an early harvest this year, so we're hoping cover crops will be good. The seed actually arrived this morning, so we've kind of mixed it up a bit this year. But some of the fields that were broken or the fields that are coming out are going to go into fodder specifically for ewes. Okay. So there's more options than just the combi and the red clover. Yeah, and
on that point there that Joe was making on, he has great foresight in the way that he's prepping, the ground for feeding. So he has his crop in there, his pea, barley, oat mix, but he has it undersown with the clover and grass mix, so that when that's harvested off, it's doing two jobs. It's helping with weed control. But now he has that readily available to come back into a grazing. So sometimes farmers might be very concerned, saying, God, how am I going to have enough grazing ahead of me when I can't spread organic fertilizer? But there are ways around it, between the clover, really fixing its own nitrogen and giving you that grass growth, putting in the red clover silage, but undersowing those crops as well, the way Joe has, that he has extra grazing coming in, as well as putting in those forage crops. That's extra grazing again. So he's really creating such an amount of feed.
There's a plan.
And there's a plan.
Yeah. And that's ploughed in the spring. So that's not a long-term clover mix. And as well as I'm finding that's more consistent than the cover crops in many ways, because it's in since the spring. So it gets it's already going by the time the harvest kicks, whereas the cover crops is very, very dependent on the date sowed. So last year's were very good, the year before were very poor. So it's they're a little bit more hit and miss, whereas the grass clover seems to be a bit more consistent as well.
And the year we're in, just depending on we get moisture, particularly down your neck of the woods, got a big bearing too. But look, I suppose even from a tillage point of view, Joe, that rotation is a stipulation, I think, in an organic scheme. But that rotation, from a tillage point of view, for weed control, for having some nitrogen in the soil, is important as well.
Yeah, and the sheep are very important to the tillage side. I know we look at profit monitors and different things with Marianne and Teagasc, but the one thing that's probably missing there is the benefit of the sheep into the tillage side. They're running on the tillage fields more or less for the winter. So, they're adding back P and K consistently. Father used to say that cattle takes it out, sheep puts it in. And like most of the farm here is 3 and 4 index. And especially one section of the farm hasn't had any fertilizer in 20 years, and that has the same ratio of 3 and 4 as the rest of the farm. So we're finding like the sheep are a massive benefit to the tillage side. It's not just one side helping the other. It's finding that balance.
It's the whole system. It's that synergistic effect. Right. Look, we were talking there briefly about lamb finishing. Obviously the swards are an important component of it. Supplement, Joe, going in, like your finishing group, have you set up on the farm at the moment? What would they be being fed, or how are you managing that?
Yeah, so the lambs at the moment are, well, we were just saying earlier, they're getting tight in grass. So I'm going to pull in one batch tomorrow, and they're either going to go on the reseed or the red clover. I'm probably just about enough silage for the winter. And the red clover is an amazing crop. It just doesn't seem to stop growing. So the red clover is actually very strong. the reseed is under some an arable silage to manage weeds, and we mowed it off the same time we mowed the red clover about 5 or 6 weeks ago. But that hasn't really the the lack of moisture hasn't rained here in 6 weeks, so the lack of moisture has kind of impacted the reseed more than the red clover. So I'm thinking I might graze the red clover with the stronger lambs. Probably have, as I said, we probably have lambs fit to go at the moment, but we're held up with just a withdrawal on a dose. We had to dose, so it's not a big deal. But I think
And they're getting access to combi crop or
yeah. So we had about 2.5 ton of combi and oats left over from the winter. So I made the decision about 4 or 5 weeks ago to create them. So they're out. I have 4 3-in-1 feeders here. So 2 of them are out. I have the oats split in 2. So I have a feeder out with each batch. One batch is considerably more than the other batch actually. But we're getting to the end of it now. I put out the last bag, 2 bags this morning. So there's 2 full feeders with them. They're not eating a huge amount, but it seems to be keeping them going.
And you would have used a similar system in previous years where you'd introduce feed at this somebody had to push them on.
Yeah. So at the back end of the year, we normally start with trucks. So we truck feed them, get them up to a certain level on the trucks. And then we'd introduce the 3-in-1 feeders. And then eventually, gradually open the 3-in-1 feeders until we just open them fully. And we let them ad lib at the end. Yeah.
Like your system has been to finish the lambs on the farm, selling into the organic market.
Yeah, we traditionally always finish our lambs here. Now we've had a little bit of seepage since we went organic. There's, I suppose, the first few years it was finding that balance of what to feed them. I know the first and second year I found them a bit hard to put cover on the straight combi crop. Some of it's weather issues. Lack of cover, lack of the cover crops were poor a couple of years ago. Kind of put it down to that. But last year I bought a seed cleaner, and one of the main reasons I bought it was to try and take the peas out of the combi a bit. So over the winter last year we took the peas out of combi, not all of them, but a lot of them, and held them back for the oat, put back in with the more combi for the oats, and then it was mainly kind of oats and barley we fed the lambs, and it worked a lot better. It definitely it brought the protein down, and it seems to have worked a lot better.
And probably then the sward you're on not going to be high enough protein, and you've been red clover and that, so you can
yeah. But it was I used it to clean seed as well, but that wasn't the reason I bought it. The main reason I bought it was to try it with the feed. I just wasn't happy. I was just finding, and I think we discussed it, potentially that high protein might be an issue, and it definitely seems to have worked. The landscape. No, it was an awful winter as well. Like we had about 100 acres underwater here for about 6 weeks. But that held up selling the lambs because we couldn't get to the fields to fill feeders, so we went back to coil and buckets. It was great crap. And
not the scene you would expect in Carlow when I was
it was.
It goes to show you.
It was horrific. It's the only word. So we ended up having to quad and buckets for about a month. It was mad actually. But so that held up. Normally the lambs would all be gone here by January, but it ran into March this year because of that.
I'm sure plenty of our listeners can relate to them kind of conditions.
Yeah.
Look, Marianne, I'm going to bring you back to this point. Like, lamb finishing within the organic sector has probably been one of the challenges in terms of that bit of leakage and maybe just give me a little bit of an idea about that, and probably leads us into part of the reason why we're chatting about this today.
Yeah, this is an issue. Really, I suppose something like 75% or even a little bit more of the lamb is not being slaughtered as organic lamb, and that's a problem. And I suppose we're really trying to put a focus on trying to encourage sheep farmers to finish out the lamb and get it to a market. But we have done research in the last 2 years or so in Europe, and their research has found that in countries, a variety of countries, Germany, France, the UK, Netherlands, Austria, and various European countries, that 68% of those consumers want to buy more Irish organic produce. And that are interested in Irish organic produce, and that in Germany and UK, for instance, Irish imports would be their number one choice after their own. They'll obviously be prioritising their own, but after that, then it's Irish lamb.
If we take the example of Joe's farm, it's a farm that has the potential for multiple crops and to finish lambs. Obviously, there's a lot of organic farmers in areas of the country where that system's going to be more challenging. There is other ongoing projects looking at that linkage between sectors. Maybe just explain a little bit about that to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Not every farm is able to finish the lamb. So there's a new project called OBLIG, the Organic Beef and Lamb Innovation Group. And this was set up at the back end of last year. And what this group is, and this project is really looking at, it's trying to link up producers, lamb producers with lamb finishers. So be it that you're coming from kind of the west of Ireland over to the east, that maybe is oversimplifying the thing, but you kind of get my gist there. And it's trying to improve those kind of chains, collaboration between the producer flocks and the finishing flocks, and that we can maybe address distribution challenges as well. So how are we going to get them across? Just getting transport organised, and then from that, then once you have transport. First of all, I suppose once you link farmers up, once we get transport organised, and then we make the contact with the end processor, and that we're able to get these lambs away finished organically, and that there's markets built up then for that organic lamb. It's also kind of aiming as well to try and improve. There is a seasonality issues that have arisen up to now as well, that I suppose a continuity of supply is required, and that's something that is coming across this long number of years, is that if we can have lamb coming month on month on month throughout the year, then we will be able to fill contracts in Europe in particular, but the seasonality is kind of problematic. And I think, looking at the way, say, farmers like Joe can maybe address that seasonality by taking batches of lambs, putting them on, be it a red clover over the winter or forage, fodder crops over the winter, and that you're able to kind of store them literally and slow them down, and that you have them coming then in those times of the year where there's not as many on the supply chain. That's the main aim.
One thing that struck me right throughout this is the importance of that linkage right to it through that supply chain, from the different processors to feed, access, everything. It just shows it takes a little bit of forward planning and takes a bit of effort from multiple bodies. In terms of forward planning and effort from them bodies, a lot of them are going to be coming together, Marianne, over the next couple of weeks at different events, looking at lamb finishing. Would you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so on the back of kind of the challenges that are here, there's this is a collaborative event that we're putting on with the department, Borbia, the organic certification bodies, along with the processors, and the ones with the lamb are involved in ICM and the farm bodies as well, and OBLIG. But really what we're doing here is we've 3 farm walks coming up. One on the 5th of August up in Mulranny in County Mayo on Michael Holmes's farm, and they're all evening 6:30 starts. And then we're having one with Joe in Fenagh in Carlow on the 12th of August, and we're having one in Kenmare on Tuesday the 11th of August, and that's in Kenmare Mart. And really what these events are, we're looking at, what farmers can do to get these lambs finished effectively and economically. We're going to have a live demo of drafting of lambs as well, and that's just that farmers can kind of put their eye out and say, well, this is what the processor wants. This is a fit lamb. This is kind of the ideal carcass that they're looking for. We'll also have some of the latest research that is being carried out in Athenry, with our researchers Philip Creighton and Frank Campion over there, under the sheep programme on organic finishing and feeding trials as well. And to finish it all off then, There will be a kind of good discussion forum then with the processors and some of the industry stakeholders as well, along with the farmers, to try and trash out these issues and problems and see where we can kind of help the thing and I suppose and go ahead. And I suppose, and then really to finish off the evening, we will have some lovely organic lamb available for tasting as well. So as a nice little treat for everybody that comes.
Never any harm.
No.
Look, they're good events. Joe, you're thrown open your gates again. I was fortunate enough to get a tour on your farm a couple of years ago. And like, if I think back to what you described from your breeding plan to your stock to the way you've managed it, there's a lot to see on the farm. I think we'll get a good opportunity to see most of your system on the day.
Yeah. So we definitely have lambs there anyhow, and some of the ewes, hopefully. Hopefully we're not still cutting corn, but maybe you get to see that as well. But yeah, so at the moment around the yards, we kind of a lot of tillage there at the moment, but definitely the lambs, the red clover is actually quite close to the yard, so we'll definitely get to see that, and hopefully, yeah, and we'll try and have maybe some of the rams on show as well as the lambs, just there to give people a taste of the different breeds.
It's good. It's never easy to throw open your gates and put it all there, but like the last time, in fairness, it was a good walk around it. We've seen a lot, and it gives a lot of different options for different parts of it. Like not all your systems can be applicable to everybody, but there's elements within any aspect of it there that you could take from and say, look, this might work for me, both for conventional and organic farmers.
Yeah. I don't hope. Yeah, hopefully. I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, it was good catching up with both of you today. There are 3 good events coming up. The walk on yours, Joe, and Marianne, I might just get you to highlight the date of that again.
Yeah, so the walk on Joe's is on the 12th of August at 6:30. That's the Carlow one. The 11th of August is the one in Kenmare and Kerry. And then we're on, the first walk is on the 5th of August up in Michael Holmes's in Mulranny, County Mayo. And we are looking for, if you're interested in coming, just to book in. So if you just go on to the Teagasc website, and look for organic events. So it's www.teagasc.ie/organic events. And we just do ask that you register purely because we have just need for the numbers for the food element of the evenings.
And that's perfect. I'll pop a link for that in the show notes for this episode. Look, it was really good catching up with both of you. It's a very interesting chat and appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Kieran.
Thanks, Kieran.
We'll leave it there for this episode. Good catching up with Joe and Marianne. I have included a link in the show notes where you can register for any of those 3 organic lamb finishing events that are coming up. That's it for me. I'm Kieran Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us wherever you get your podcasts.